Here at Powder House, our brewing process starts with our silo. It's not a glorified sign that's outside. It's actually a 60,000 pound silo that holds 2-row barley. That barley is the base malt for most of our beers outside of one, which is our Pilsner, which uses a different base malt. So that base malt gets augered in, weighed, and then milled in and added to our mash tun. That mash tun meets hot water from our hot liquor tank and essentially makes like a barley tea, or what brewers call the mash. That mash at that point sits for about an hour, and we let it settle towards the latter part of that hour to essentially filter out a lot of the proteins you get from making that barley tea. In that process, we also are extracting sugar from that 2-row barley and whatever grain flavors from the other grain that we add, roasted or caramel malts, to get different characters, different flavors or sweetness. We are extracting those flavors. Those flavors then are pumped from our mash tun over to our boil kettle. And our boil kettle is exactly what it sounds. It boils that, what is now called wort. Wort, or wort, depending on who you talk to in the brewing industry, is young beer that is not yet fermented out. During that boil process, we actually add hops. Depending on when we add the hops, you'll get different kinds of characteristics from the hops. So hops that are added towards the end of the boil are for aroma. Hops that are added at the beginning of the boil are specifically for bittering. So IPAs have a lot, they're very heavy on that initial hop once the boil starts. Because the longer they cook, the less aroma, the more bitterness you get out of that. From there, we pump over to our fermenters, which we've cleaned, sanitized, and sealed, and added yeast to. So we're essentially introducing this yeast that's sitting in this fermenter to wort, or unfermented beer, so very high sugar content liquid, that at that point we let the yeast do its work. So brewers make the wort, yeast makes the beer. And at that point we ferment anywhere from 10 to 45 days or more, depending on the beer, and we allow the yeast to do its thing. It eats sugar, produces alcohol as a byproduct, as well as CO2. So we'll allow the CO2 to come out. We don't want anything getting into the beer. So that does a very good job at keeping anything out. At that point, we transfer over to our bright tank. Our bright tank is where we condition the product. At that point, there is alcohol in it. We carbonate it, let it settle out any of the existing proteins that are in it, and it's beer. We're able to package it, bottle it, keg it. So that's the process of beer. To some extent, it doesn't change between breweries. It changes between styles of brewing. Different brewers will have different ways of managing how some of that process works. But at the end of the day, that's a very broad version of the brewing process. That's why we make beer. Got to make it, please the senses. If it doesn't please the senses, there's no sense in making beer, right?